Most drivers believe that when a shop recommends a $4,000 repair, the problem gets fixed. And honestly, that belief makes sense. But in modern cars, that repair often fixes the symptom, not the failure that caused it. Today, I'll show you why the wrong component gets blamed first, and why diagnostics almost guarantee this outcome. I'll also give you a 60-second check that can stop you from approving the wrong repair entirely. Because the biggest mistake isn't saying yes to a costly repair. It's saying yes too early. Let's get into it. If you've ever approved a repair like this, you didn't do anything stupid. In fact, you probably did exactly what a careful, rational owner is supposed to do. The car starts acting up. It hesitates, it shudders, maybe even stalls. And then a warning light comes on. You take it to a shop, they scan it, and the diagnosis lines up perfectly with what you're feeling. The symptoms match. The code points somewhere specific. And the estimate is high enough that it must be serious. So when you hear, the transmission is failing, your brain fills in the rest. Okay, that explains it, let's fix it. And once that expensive part is replaced, something important happens. The light goes off. The behavior improves. For a while, the car feels normal again. That moment is dangerous. Because modern cars are incredibly good at telling you what reacted to a problem. They are much worse at telling you what started it. Diagnostics don't ask, why did this part get stressed? They ask, which part complained last? And the part that complains last is usually the most sensitive, the most expensive, and the easiest to blame. In a second, I'll show you how this creates a very specific failure pattern. One that pushes owners toward the same costly decision over and over again. And once you see that pattern, the rest of this video will make uncomfortable sense. Here's the mistake almost everyone makes when they think about car failures. We imagine them as single events. One part breaks, you replace it. Problem solved. That used to be mostly true, but it's not how modern cars fail anymore. Modern cars fail in chains. One system drifts slightly out of spec. That puts stress on another system. That stress gets managed, compensated, smoothed over, until something finally can't compensate anymore. And that's the part that throws the code. That's the part that shows up on the scan tool. That's the part that gets blamed. Think of it like this. If you trip and fall, the pain shows up in your knee. But the reason you fell might be a loose step you never noticed. Treating the knee doesn't fix the step. Modern diagnostics work the same way. They don't ask what condition caused this. They ask which component reacted outside its limits. And the component that reacts first is almost never the one that started the problem. It's the one with the tightest tolerances, the one monitoring the most variables, the one designed to protect everything downstream of it. That's why the same categories of parts keep getting replaced first. Not because they're weak, not because they're scams, but because they're the early warning system. Here's the critical thing most owners never hear. When you replace that downstream part, the car often does improve. Not because the root problem is gone, but because you've reset the system that was complaining the loudest. For a while, everything looks fixed. And that's what traps people. Because when the symptoms come back later, it feels like bad luck, or a defective replacement, or these cars just don't last anymore. Coming up, we'll walk you through the most common real-world example of this failure chain. The one that quietly turns uncertainty into a $4,000 decision. And in that example, the part that gets blamed and replaced is usually the transmission. Once you see how it unfolds, the repair estimate suddenly makes sense. And so does why it often doesn't end the problem. The $4,000 repair. Let's finally talk about the repair itself. In most cases, the $4,000 decision shows up as a transmission replacement. Sometimes it's a CVT. Sometimes it's a conventional automatic. But the story almost always starts the same way. The car hesitates when pulling away from a stop. It shudders under light throttle. Maybe it hunts for gears. Sometimes it even feels like it's slipping. Then the scan happens. You see transmission-related codes, temperature warnings, adaptation limits reached, maybe even a performance fault. At that point, the diagnosis feels airtight. The symptoms line up, the data points there, And the transmission is absolutely capable of causing everything you're experiencing. So the shop says what any reasonable shop would say. The transmission is failing. Here's the part that almost nobody explains. In modern cars, the transmission is not just a mechanical device. It's a reaction system. It reacts to engine torque output, airflow stability, fuel delivery consistency, cooling efficiency, software corrections happening upstream. When any of those inputs become unstable, the transmission is forced to adapt. It changes shift timing. It adjusts pressure. It compensates to protect itself and the drivetrain. For a while, that compensation works, but eventually it reaches a limit. And when it does, the transmission is the first system to raise its hand and say, "I can't work with this anymore." That's when the code appears. That's when the symptoms become obvious. And that's when the transmission gets blamed. Mechanics see this pattern all the time. A rough idle caused by worn spark plugs, or a weak coil starts creating uneven torque. A contaminated airflow sensor skews fuel trims just enough to cause hesitation. A worn engine or transmission mount lets vibration travel where it shouldn't. But by the time those upstream problems show up in the way the car feels, the codes have already shifted downstream. So what looks like a slipping transmission is often the drivetrain reacting to instability that started somewhere else, and the scan tool points to the part that complained last. That's not a bad diagnosis, it's an incomplete one. And when the transmission is replaced, something interesting happens. All of those adaptations get reset. The new unit starts fresh. The system has breathing room again. And for a while, the car feels fixed. Not because the original instability is gone, but because the system that was complaining the loudest has been silenced. This is why so many owners say, "It drove great after the replacement," until it didn't. The transmission wasn't imaginary. The failure wasn't fake. But it also wasn't the first thing that went wrong. And unless the upstream condition gets addressed, the new transmission is being asked to live inside the same environment that killed the last one. In the next part, I'll show you what usually creates that instability in the first place, and why it almost never shows up on a repair estimate until it's too late. So, if the transmission isn't the first thing that failed, what is? In most cases, it's not one dramatic break. It's instability. Small, compounding problems upstream that quietly push the drivetrain outside the conditions it was designed to tolerate. The most common place this starts is the engine. Modern engines rely on incredibly precise airflow and fuel control. Tiny deviations matter now in a way they didn't 20 years ago. If airflow becomes inconsistent, even slightly, torque delivery stops being smooth. If torque delivery isn't smooth, the transmission has to compensate. That instability can come from things that look minor on paper but matter a lot in real driving. A contaminated airflow sensor, a dirty MAF, can misread incoming air just enough to create uneven torque. A small intake leak can introduce a faint vacuum hiss that turns into hesitation under light throttle. Carbon buildup can change airflow patterns so the engine doesn't respond the same way twice. Fuel delivery that's slightly inconsistent can cause momentary misfires that never trip a hard fault. None of these look like transmission problems on their own, but together they create a drivetrain that's constantly correcting itself. Here's where this gets expensive. The engine can tolerate that instability for a long time. The transmission can tolerate it for a while. But the transmission is the one that feels it first. Every hesitation, every torque spike, every moment where the engine doesn't respond the same way twice. Over time, those corrections stack up. Pressure adjustments get more aggressive, shift timing narrows, heat builds faster than it should. Eventually, the transmission hits a boundary it can't compensate past. That's when the car starts to feel wrong. And because the instability isn't dramatic, no loud noises, no obvious leaks, it rarely gets addressed directly. Instead, the downstream system that finally complained gets replaced. The irony is this: if you fix the upstream instability first, the transmission systems often disappear, or never escalate in the first place. But once the transmission starts throwing codes, the conversation shifts. Attention moves to the most expensive part in the chain. This is why so many repair estimates focus on what failed, not what caused the failure. And it's also why owners feel blindsided when a massive repair doesn't bring long-term relief. In a moment, I'll give you a simple way to tell whether you're looking at a root problem or just the first casualty in a failure chain. Because once you understand this distinction, the decision changes completely. The 60-second check. Before you approve any major repair, especially one that starts with a 3 or 4, there's a simple check you can do. It doesn't require tools, it doesn't require mechanical knowledge, and it takes about a minute. Here it is. When a shop tells you a major component is failing, don't ask if it's bad, ask why it failed. Specifically ask 3 questions. First, what condition caused this part to fail? Not what code threw it, not what symptom it showed. What condition pushed it outside its limits? If the answer is vague, that's just what happens, or these units are known for this. That's a red flag. Second, what feeds into this part? Every major component depends on inputs from somewhere else. For a transmission, that means torque delivery from the engine. And torque depends on things like engine airflow, fuel pressure, ignition timing, and cooling. If airflow is inconsistent, torque won't be smooth. If torque isn't smooth, the transmission has to compensate. If no one can clearly explain what feeds into the part being replaced, there's a good chance the failure chain hasn't been fully traced yet. Third, if we replace this part without fixing that condition, what happens next? This is the most important question, and the one most people never ask. A good shop won't be offended by it. They'll explain the risk honestly. If the answer is, it might come back, or we'll have to see, you've just learned something critical. Here's the key takeaway. Replacing a part answers the question, what stopped working? Fixing the root cause answers the question, why did it stop working? Those are not the same thing. And the most expensive mistakes happen when we confuse one for the other. So let's bring this home. Most cars don't fail because one big part suddenly dies. They fail because we fix the first casualty, not the root cause. This is how a $4,000 repair gets approved with confidence, and how the real problem survives long enough to do even more damage. Here's what to do instead. First, when a major repair is recommended, ask what condition caused it to fail. Second, identify what feeds into that part: airflow, cooling, torque, or electrical stability. Third, don't confuse a quiet car with a fixed car, because silence isn't proof. It's often just a reset. This doesn't mean the transmission was fine, it means it was reacting to something else first. And once you start thinking in failure chains instead of isolated parts, repair decisions get a lot simpler and a lot cheaper. The mistake this avoids is approving certainty instead of sequence. And the next time you're handed a big estimate, the question to ask isn't, is this part bad? It's, what made it bad? If you want more buyer-proof car truth like this, with zero hype, subscribe. And in the next video, I'll show you the SUV features that creates this exact pattern after 60,000 miles.